Violence hit Manipur after 31 people belonging to the Kuki and Naga communities were released following intense overnight efforts by security agencies and even civil society groups. The development comes just days after a deadly ambush on church leaders that sharply escalated tensions across the hill districts. While the releases have brought temporary relief, protests, allegations against militant groups and deep mistrust between communities continue to keep the situation extremely fragile. And the big question now is whether this is only a brief pause in the violence or whether there is long-term stability in sight, because 31 people belonging to the Kuki and Naga communities who were allegedly held hostage by armed groups in Manipur's Kangpokpi and Senapati districts have now been released in a significant late-night development. And according to officials, 12 Naga women from Konsakul village were released at Makun village, while several Kuki civilians, including women and church-linked individuals, were handed over to security forces in Senapati district. Two Salesian brothers associated with Don Bosco institutions were also freed separately. Survivors described being blindfolded and taken to unknown hilly locations during their captivity. The releases come after sustained pressure from local organizations, security agencies and political negotiations led by the state government. However, the situation remains extremely sensitive as anger continues to grow following the killing of church leaders earlier this week. Let's listen in to a Naga village guard who claims to have freed an underage woman hostage.
The Naga village guard Northern Command, upon the request of the CSOs of Senapati, is releasing a Kuki lady hostage on the ground of her age and gender. Similarly, a Mitai individual was also handed over to the police last evening upon verification of his identity. Furthermore, we wanted to make it very clear that no individuals from Zomi community were detained within Senapati jurisdiction.
Viewers, the latest hostage crisis has once again exposed the deep fragility of inter-community relations in Manipur's hill districts. The violence erupted after suspected militants ambushed church leaders traveling through Kangpokpi district on Tiger Road, killing senior religious figures and injuring several others. In the aftermath, allegations and counter-allegations also intensified between different ethnic groups, with both Kuki and Naga organizations accusing armed factions of targeted intimidation. Protest sit-ins were organized across affected districts demanding justice, security and immediate intervention by the government. The attack has particularly shaken reconciliation efforts that were reportedly underway between tribal communities in the region. And security agencies now fear that unless confidence-building measures are urgently strengthened, the violence could widen into another prolonged phase of instability across the hills. And the real challenge before the government is not just restoring order, but rebuilding trust between communities that now increasingly see each other through fear and suspicion. To help us understand what really is happening in Manipur, we have Brijesh Pandey, our input editor, PK Mishra, former ADG BSF, Hejang Misao, a social activist from Manipur, and Colonel retired Shanti Kumar Sapam, spokesperson of the Meitei Heritage Society. Brijesh, first, we've seen two-way conflict between two ethnicities. Now there's a third one also emerging. Is it at its nascent stage where it can be nipped at the bud, or is it reaching a very dangerously new phase?
Well, I think what has happened today, Deepak, when the news of the release of hostages have come, it's a very welcome development. Because I personally feel that it would definitely help calm the tempers a bit. But if you feel that the release of the hostages will result in complete de-escalation, I don't see that happening as well. So the situation remains fragile, and the overall situation in Manipur remains fragile, where one killing is enough spark to completely burn down the forward movement built by the agencies, the local people involved, and also the state government. So yes, it's a very welcome move that 31 individuals belonging to both Naga and Kuki communities, they have been released, especially women and children, and it's a good step forward as far as building trust is concerned. But I would leave it at that. I would say that the situation still remains very tense and literally sitting on a tinderbox.
Mr. Misao, how do you look at the release of these hostages? Your first thoughts, sir?
First of all, I would say it's a big shame for both the community who belongs to Christian religion, and both the communities are also the tribal community. Rather than the harbinger of peace, engaging in this kind of hostility is a big shame. And it is also shameful to be called ourselves as a Christians, because the Christian teaching says love your neighbor as you love yourself. Now, what is happening is very unfortunate. As the aftermath of the killing of the church leaders, there is eventual holding of hostages of the civilian, both from the Naga and the Kuki. And it is a welcome to everyone, especially to the family members, those of the hostages who were released. And I would also appeal to both the communities to release the remaining hostages. Still, 6 Nagas men are under the custody of the Kuki, and 14 Kuki's men are still under the custody of the Nagas. And I have already made appeal even in my Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp status, requesting both the community to show sanity and avoid all this savagery kind of action by releasing those innocent people on humanitarian ground, and also for the sake of the family members.
So, but such appeals are being made since the violence started in 2023, but so far nothing has really been done as far as restoring the peace and normalcy is concerned. Colonel Shantikumar Sapam, what is it that's missing, as far as bringing all the communities together and having a very, amicable solution to the entire crisis?
Good evening, everyone, and a big Jai Hind to the country. Well, firstly, what I would like to say is, yesterday's situation that I would like to, day before yesterday's situation that I would like to just hold upon. The NSCN, I had a tenure in Manipur during the intense underground, militancy time, way back in 94, 92, 98. And that time the, insurgency problem was very intense. And the NSCN never touches ladies and the religion leaders. This is what used to be there. And nothing is permanent in this world, keep changing, but I don't know if things have changed or not. But the principle which the NSCN had was that they never touch ladies. If army officer is moving with a lady, they will never touch the lady, the officer, if the lady is there, and children are there, and the religious leader. This is one thing which I would like to put across to the nation. And secondly, as I said before, there's a lot of understanding between the communities. Let me tell you, Lamjatang Haukev is from the Thado community. I sit together with him in Imphal, and we had lunch also together in one of the occasions. We have the same type of understanding, but then what happened is, I have been telling again and again, which we will see subsequently also, when there is a peace, then there are some force who do not want peace in the state. That is why it is happening. We have seen it. There was so many things development coming up and all those things, but then suddenly things are frozen again, and a lot of difficult situations are cropping up in the hills also, in the valley also. And why is it so? As I analyze, the beneficiaries of Burma Act is also playing a very big role in the state. The beneficiaries I'm talking about. So this we have to understand. And until the time the people, the citizen of India, that means who came to Manipur before 1961, if we don't unite and understand, then this boiling will keep on happening in Manipur, because vested interest people are playing a big role in our state. A very unfortunate on our, with the people staying over here. I would submit.
So let me bring in former ADG BSF here. Sir, when Mr. Sapam says there are people with vested interests, who is he referring to? Because this is not the first time that, such claims are being made. It has been, one allegation that has repeated since the violence started, that there are external forces aiding these groups. Who are these external forces, sir?
Deepak, I have spoken several times. Even yesterday also I have spoken in your channel who are the external forces. There is nothing to hide about that. Colonel Sapam was just mentioning about Burma Act. You see, $120 million or $137 million are being sanctioned by CIA for Burma every year for these rebels to fight against the junta. And that money see, some part of it comes to Manipur and Mizoram. There is nothing to hide. This is coming. And then the weapons are also coming. I will also tell you, Deepak, with that, it's not that yesterday when we discussed that the JDUF was involved in this killing of its Baptist Church leaders. That is the JDUF, which is a part of NSCN-IM. I can well tell you it is not JDUF only. It is the KLA Letkolen group also is involved. We have to be very cautious. It is a new group. KLA Letkolen group is also there. Deepak, I will also mention here. You see, our UKLF is also a part of SU. But yet, in Tronglobi, where the two children, they were killed and the lady was injured, that was more or less the information it comes that it was done by UKLF, which is a party to SOO. And now, you see what has happened just yesterday. It is not that now 20 more or 24 more to be released who are there in custody. You see, the Chandel is also completely, Chandel block is there. Whole Chandel district is totally blocked. What for it is there? There is another model in Noni district yesterday where one Wilson Thanga was killed. He was from Naga group, and that is how Chandel district is totally closed today. And violence is continuing in Chandel, and Nagas are closing it. So I can see the statement of Bibobi, our ex-chief minister. That is okay. Political development will there, political statements will be there. But again, Deepak, I am telling you what I found. What we found at boundary pillar 90 in Kamjong district on India. Manipur, Myanmar border, BP number 90. The improvised explosive devices were planned by KNA of Burma against our forces. So this is all happening in the border at the boundary pillar. So until this Burma Act, CIA's involvement, China's involvement, crossing of weapons, crossing of drugs, crossing of money, crossing of dollars, parties are there in Manipur and Mizoram, those who are getting it. There is nothing to hide it. They are getting money, they are getting drugs, and they are getting weapons. Those weapons are...
Sir, if we know what the source is, then why aren't those channels being cut off?
Several times I have told in your channel that I do not know the reason for which we cannot deploy a border guarding force in Manipur-Myanmar border. What is the problem when we are having thousands and thousands of forces? So that has to be blocked. And see what has happened in the boundary pillar number 90. Our forces would have been killed. The ID was immediately, that was found and it was destroyed by Assam Rifle. So what is all happening? Colonel Sapam was telling the truth. Because of Burma Act, because of this, billions of dollars are coming to Burma, that is to Myanmar, is open, completely open. So now, I told you what about this UKLF? UKLF is a party of SU, but then they are going for violence. We have to see to it. How come when they are party to SU, they cannot go for violence and fire rocket in Tronglobi? And you see the KLA group, KLA Lamtalam group, they are also involved in this killing, including JDUF. It is all between these two groups. So violence has come back.
Violence has come back. There are new groups that are taking birth.
Absolutely.
But Brijesh, what are the problems and what are the obstacles to act on this front, on taking on these groups and these external forces that we know from where the weapons and drugs are being supplied?
Well, I think what is happening is that the external forces which we are talking about, as Mr. Mishra Bhai rightly pointed out, is something which is not new. As Colonel Sapam was also pointing to, this is something which we have discussed ad nauseum. People know, people in the know. about what kind of role is being played by these external organizations. But I think we need to formulate a strategy first to tackle the internal situation, which is to make sure that there's a political progress as far as the conflict between the Kuki Meitei ethnicity is concerned. There has to be effective political implementation and also security implementation working in absolute tandem with the local forces to make sure that the tension or the escalation between Kuki and Nagas don't arise or don't spiral out of control. Right now what is happening is that when you are hoping that that there is a degree of peace which is prevailing in the state of Manipur, you see one killing of one particular ethnicity which is enough to destroy whatever progress you have made. Still approximately 20 people are in they are still in custody of various groups, and it'll be I would pray to God that nothing unfortunate happens to them, and like the kind of release which we see today happens there. But if you are not able to take control of the internal situation, what happens is that it gives a real free hand to the people who are external enemies of the India, and they would want to create as much mischief as possible to make sure that that the peace process is never able to gain any kind of traction, and this is the big problem. I think the government has to adopt a multi-pronged strategy to make sure that we are very effectively tackling those external forces which are trying to destabilize the country, but B, also to make sure that that there's enough boots on the ground to make sure that that most of these civil societies which are roaming around with heavy weapons which have been looted are also brought back. So there has to be a stern security message, but also at same time a good enough political messaging also to make sure that people voluntarily get out of that flux. But honestly speaking, a lot has to be done in order to restore normalcy.